welcome everyone, and many thanks to those of you who got here right on time. We love to start right on time, and that helps a lot. People are still drifting in a little bit. I'm Dr. Kesson, and this is Neo-Humanist Education 104, the philosophy of Neo-Humanist education. I'm here with my co-teacher, Krishna Prema, Christy Shaver, and our host, Scott Hackworth, who will keep us all in line technically. While we wait for any remaining people to drift in, let's just take a moment and do a brief centering relaxation exercise, about 3 minutes or so. I imagine we're all sitting in an office chair, um, indoors, but let's close our eyes for a moment and imagine that we are sitting outdoors in our favorite outdoor space on the ground, perhaps. For me, that outdoor space would be here on my mountain in Vermont. For you, it might be near the ocean or in your backyard. Just take a minute to settle in to the moment, to breathe a couple of nice deep breaths. Imagine the ground beneath you. Are you sitting on sand or grass or a rock? Feel what it feels like to be sitting on the ground with the earth beneath you, and breathe into that feeling. What are the sounds that surround you? Do you hear birds in the sky, or leaves rustling, or wind blowing through the trees? Or maybe you hear ocean waves rolling in. The air is full of sound, full of creatures. Take a moment to breathe into what's around you. So beneath us is the soil, the mycelium, the creatures that live underground, constantly foraging, making new connections, feeding everything on the planet around us. The sky is filled with moisture, bacteria, viruses, oxygen, life-giving air. Just breathe into everything that's above, below, and around you, and begin to appreciate your deep connection with everything, no matter how small, that lives. And that is our aim with neo-humanist education, is to learn how to become one with everything in existence. Let's slowly open our eyes and come back to our place and come back to each other. And We welcome you all to this class. Great to see so many people, and people are still coming in. So let's take a moment.
Namaskar.
I'd like my namaskar, everyone. Greetings. For those of you who do not know, the word namaskar can mean many things. I greet the divine within you, and often accompanied by a hand greeting. Okay, so I'd like to my co-host, my co-teacher, to introduce herself now.
Thank you, Kathleen. My name is Christy Shaver. I also go by my spiritual name, Krishna Prema. And I was part of the first cohort that went through this fantastic 2-year program. And I am currently co-teaching with Kathleen. And on the other side of things, I am also a grad student studying environmental studies. And I'm just really looking forward to the next 6 weeks and getting to know all of you. And yeah, so thank you,
Okay,
Kathleen.
great. Well, thank you. It's been wonderful to welcome Christy as a full faculty member onto our faculty. She really is a wonderful instructor. And Scott, would you introduce yourself? Our Zoom host, who may have vacated his post for a moment. And Didi Tapamaya, are you here? I
I
don't
don't
see
see
her.
her.
I don't see her yet. We're expecting Didi Ananda Tapamaya, who is a teaching assistant in the class. She will be one of the people reading your work. So we'll start just with a little housekeeping. Be sure your name is in the lower left corner of your screen. And we like to see everyone's face when at all possible, but especially in the breakout rooms, please be sure to keep your camera on. There's nothing more difficult than talking to a blank screen, we've learned. So, a little bit of housekeeping here. Oop, if I can get my PowerPoint to move. There we go. So the syllabus has been posted in both English and Portuguese. I hope you've had a chance to review it. Take your time and really read it through because it sort of gives you the whole outline of our expectations and what you can expect and what we hope to cover in the class. This cohort is, as you know, a big new experiment for us at the college. We have never had a dual language class before. Um, and we're learning as we go, and we will probably make some mistakes. So we're looking for you to tell us how we can do things better and make the classes work for you. Um, let's talk for a minute before we do much else about language and the translation opportunities we have here. And Christine, do you want to talk a bit about the closed captions?
Yeah, if you're not familiar with the closed captions, so before we get started, you can take a moment and you want to look at the bottom of your Zoom window and you'll find a CC or closed cap or show captions button. And you're going to click that. Then you're going to say, it's going to ask you then to select show captions to see subtitles. And they should appear at the bottom of your screen. If you want those captions in another language, then click the arrow next to the captions button and choose select spoken language or translate to the language you are seeking. You can open the full transcript or adjust caption size in the same menu. And of course, at any time you can turn off, off and on those captions. And they should follow you into the breakout room when we go into the breakout rooms.
That's our hope. We
Yeah.
have breakout rooms once tonight, and last night in the first class, we tried sort of mixing it up and putting Portuguese speakers and English speakers together. And we found it less than successful because the closed captions were pretty terrible. So tonight we're going to try to put you in a group with people who you share a language with, and and hopefully at least one dual language person in the group who can report back to the full group. So you'll let us know how that goes. The class structure is I'm trying to keep it very simple this time because we're learning so much about um, teaching to a mixed group like this. So, but it will usually consist of some sort of meditation or contemplative exercise in the beginning. Um, we will have occasional, well, pretty much every time, mini lectures that hopefully you don't have to look at one talking head for too long. That's the nice thing about co-teaching. We get to at least be more than one talking head. Um, some mini lectures, some breakout groups, perhaps a video or two. And we're really hoping to build your participation in class so that we hear from students more often. Um, really at the heart of this program, I think what we discovered after the first cohort went through, that really the most important part of it was the relationship building, the creation of a community of learners, and they have stayed very connected after the course is over. Um, it was really fun for me this summer to be in Romania, and I got to meet all of the students who had graduated before and really appreciate what a community we had built. Uh, Christy, you want to talk a little bit about discussion and confidentiality?
Yeah, so we're all coming into this space from different places all over the world and speaking, we have some multiple languages here. So that's something that we need to take into consideration. Another consideration we want to recognize is that this cohort consists of people with some acquaintance with neo-humanism, yoga, or Ananda Marga, but not everyone shares the same experience. So we should make sure when we're in these breakout rooms or even discussing in the broader terms that we are careful about not to use any code words or transient ideas. We want to make sure we are translating words into everyday language and kind of avoid jargon. So we want this also to be a safe space. And so we do practice, confidentiality. We want everybody here to feel comfortable to share and to express themselves fully. So we appreciate all of you guys taking that into consideration.
Great. Um, okay, workload. I know many of you are very, very busy people. You have lives outside of this course. Many of you are parents and have families. Many of you have full-time jobs. Some of you have teaching jobs. Um, and some of you, your work requires that you travel a lot. We try to take that into consideration when coming up with the workload for the classes. And we have dialed it down quite a bit as we've learned how busy people are. Um, and I will say there are two courses at once happening now. Many of you are taking 107 at the same time that you're taking 104. 107 is pretty light on reading and writing. It's more of a kind of a hands-on activity-based class. Philosophy is inherently complex. The ideas are deep and require a lot of thinking, and the reading may be more difficult. It may be the most difficult that you'll encounter in the whole program. So, in terms of workload, there'll be some reading each week, um, and very short reflective writing, usually asking you to comment on a couple of ideas in the reading and perhaps another short writing assignment. And there will be one real paper due at the end of the course. And I'll tell you ahead of time what it is so you can be thinking about it. It will be your way of demonstrating your personal understanding of neo-humanist education philosophy in any format that you choose. It might be a piece of writing that you do for parents, it might be for a school handbook, it might be to describe a program, or it might be for a grant. It can serve any purpose, but it will be a demonstration of how you really understand neo-humanist education philosophy. So that's basically what the course will look like. Christy's going to talk for a moment here about course policies.
Yeah, so pretty much what the main thing is want to cover is attendance. So it's a kind of a small but very important detail. So attendance is required for course completion. We do ask you to communicate ahead of time if you're going to need to miss a class. Your instructors will determine whether the absence is excused or unexcused. If you do to make up class during the you can make up one class during the 6-week course, and that will include watching the recording and possibly doing a short extra task. Recordings will be available, but they're really mainly to be there for language support and for that, that one-time excused absence if you need to take it. They're not to be as a substitute for being here live because as Kathleen is really, I think, impressed on is this course is about, creating relationship, dialogue, and shared reflection. So being here really, really matters. But if you do miss a class, just please, get in touch with us and because we want to help you, we want to help you stay on track. So we want to help you succeed in this program.
Right. We want everyone to get through the course. So the homework, the small pieces of writing and the reading are due at the end of the week. So we meet on a Tuesday. So your assignments will be due sometime on Saturday. And this is really to give the readers a chance to really read your work very carefully and respond to you before the next class. So that's why we expect everything on time. If we don't get an assignment, there's no guarantee that we'll be able to, have the time to read it and respond. And we find that that dialogue between the reader and the writer is a key part of learning. So hopefully we can all work together to make that happen. Okay. Any questions about just all these sort of housekeeping details before we go on? Ruth, are you talking to us or no? Okay. I was going to tell you to unmute. I thought you were saying something. Christy, you
Can
see
I,
any hands up?
yep. Can I say something?
Ah,
I'm,
Jeannie Tapamaya is here. So please introduce
yeah,
yourself.
yeah, I'm sorry, apologies for being late because I'm on my phone. And I didn't find the link, but Arati
Oh,
helped me to find the link. So I'm very happy to be here. So apologies for being late. So yeah.
that's okay. We're really thrilled to have Dee Dee working with us. She is an alum of the program, one of our wonderful students. So she's very knowledgeable about neo-humanist education. Okay, the
Glad to
course
be here.
reading. Yeah, the course reading, um, almost all will come from our new textbook, which was just published in 2024, called Becoming One with the World. And the good news is I've finally negotiated with the publishers to have ebooks um, for our students, and that will start happening after the first of the year when for the people who are going forward with the whole program, we will be giving you your own personal ebook. So I'm very excited about that because textbooks in the academic world are ridiculously expensive, and it's it's been hard to get these out to people. Okay, so let's start with some actual content then. Christy and I will both talk a little bit, and then we will have a breakout group. Looks like we have somebody in the waiting room here to admit. So philosophy, right? Why philosophy? It seems like a rather arcane subject, but as those of you know who have read Sarkar's work. Um, Neo-humanism is an important philosophy, and from the philosophy of neo-humanism, everything that we do in education flows from that, whether we're making lesson plans or creating curriculum or coming up with a teaching method or figuring out how to discipline children. It all comes from philosophy. So that's why the first course is a philosophical course. Um, most of the courses in the program are much more practical, hands-on, what to do in a school or a community, but this is a very theoretical course. So, oops. Here are some of the big questions that philosophers ask, and some of you have studied philosophy, so you know this. But philosophers ask, what does it mean to be human? What is a human being? Who are we? Who are these creatures that have been born on this planet? And what is the purpose of life? And as part of that, what is my purpose? What am I here for? What should I be doing? Uh, Philosophers ask questions about knowledge, and knowledge is essential to education, right? But what is knowledge? Where does it come from? Uh, how do we know things? How do children learn things? And I think most important nowadays in this crazy information world we live in, how do we determine what is true? How can we know if something is misinformation or a fiction or a narrative that someone's made up to manipulate us? That may be one of the most important things that neo-humanist education can do is help children learn how to discern the truth. And philosophers also concern themselves with the question of values. What is important in life? How should we live? What are the ethics and the morals that we should live by? So, Christy will talk a bit about what is a philosophy of education.
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah, so moving forward, so what is the philosophy of education? So really every approach to teaching and learning rests on a set of values and beliefs like Kathleen was talking about, whether or not we state them. So a philosophy of education kind of, if you think about it, really gives us a framework for those beliefs and helps us understand why we teach, what we teach, and how we teach. So every school system and classroom reflects an underlying view of purpose of education. These views are going to shape how we think about knowledge, growth, and human potential. And as we're all, here learning about neo-humanist education, this framework really expands beyond that intellectual growth. So it includes the cultivation of wisdom, compassion, and reverence for all living beings. And as you'll learn, our philosophy asks us to nurture not just the mind, but the whole person, the head, the heart, and the hands. So these beliefs guide the big questions we bring to education. So as you can see on the screen, what should be the aim of education? What is the role of culture in shaping learning? How do children learn? What is the appropriate role of the teacher? And ultimately, what is worth knowing and how do we decide? So when we explore these questions, we really want to begin to think, see how our philosophy of education kind of influences everything, from our curriculum to our teaching methods to how we relate to our students.
Okay. So these questions are not questions that most teachers and school leaders ask. There's a kind of a conventional wisdom about education that is the dominant force in society today. And much as there are cultural differences from country to country and region to region, I have to say that Western education, which was sort of born in the state of Prussia in the 19th century, has pretty much infiltrated everywhere in the globe. There is sort of a dominant approach to education in bureaucratic societies. And what teachers do is governed by rules and regulations. And the idea that the main purpose is to create workers suitable for jobs in a competitive economy. And this is true in India, it's true in Africa, it's true in the United States. The main goal is governed by this overarching economy, global economy. And another function of schooling that many philosophers write about is called reproduction. Schooling generally is designed to reproduce the dominant social order. So, what's the dominant social order? Well, right now it's pretty much global corporate capitalism, materialism, and consumerism, etc. You all know this. So, neo-humanist education really, at the heart of it, is an alternative vision of the future. It's a different vision for our global society. It's a very big vision, and it's happening. Our learning is happening at a moment in history that many people consider a transition. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but we are in a transition from this monolithic society that we live in, which is having terrible effects on the planet, to a life-centered philosophy of education, and that's kind of at the heart of why we talk so much about philosophy in the beginning. So, Christy, would you like to summarize what Sarkar has said about the aims of neo-humanist education?
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. So, as you can see the quote on here, some of you guys might have already be familiar with this quote, and it's really kind of one of the foundations of this course. So, when the underlying spirit of humanism is extended to everything, animate and inanimate, in this universe, I have designed this as neo-humanism. This neo-humanism will elevate humanism to universalism, the cult of love for all created beings of this universe. Sri Sri PR Sarkar. So,
Okay,
yeah, do you
yeah,
want to have somebody read it? And
yes, let's
yes,
have a Portuguese speaker read it now. Please, a volunteer.
Citação de Prabhat Ranjar Sarkar. Quando o espírito subjacente do humanismo se estende a tudo, animado e inanimado, neste universo, eu designei isso como neo-humanismo. Este neo-humanismo elevará o humanismo ao universalismo, ao culto do amor por todos os seres criados neste universo.
Thank you, Ari. It sounds beautiful in Portuguese. I have to say, despite my novice position in all this, I'm really enjoying translating all this work into Portuguese. It's such a beautiful language, and maybe I'll even learn how to speak it by the end of this program. So, Christy, can you unpack for us a little bit what Starkar meant by the underlying spirit of humanism? What is it? And this will be a review, I know, for many of you, but it's worth doing, I think. What is that spirit of humanism?
yeah, I think it's important to take a moment to really reflect on this and to really think about what did he mean by the underlying spirit of neo-humanism. And I think this is idea that we can expand on understanding of education, of our relationship to others and to all of life. And I believe this is something that we're actually going to be, revisiting when we get to our breakout rooms shortly. But yeah, so what is the underlying spirit of humanism? So first of all, we have the importance of rationalism. And then we look at the advent of inquiry and self-reflection. And of course, then the scientific and technological development and inspired new values, human dignity and rights. And then we also look at the ideals of democracy, the belief in personal and social growth and progress, and the increased tolerance for diversity. So again, like I said, we're going to return to these briefly, in our breakout groups. But there's also some limitations to humanism, and I'll let Kathleen share those.
Yeah, I think, unlike many of the philosophers who are writing in a post-humanist frame, there's dehumanism and anti-humanism and transhumanism and all sorts of things. All of them uh, are related in some way, but most of them are completely throw away uh, the ideas of humanism. Unlike them, Sarkar reminds us that humanism, which emerged like 500 years ago during the European Enlightenment, was an important new development in human history. Um, Prior to that, in the Western world at least, and I can't speak about other major societies like in China or Africa, very different histories. But in the Western world, we had been enclosed by medieval superstition and church dogma for centuries and centuries. And the individual human was not recognized as an important entity. Um, and so these things did not exist, democracy, social growth, progress, etc. So humanism was quite a wonderful thing. But as I'm fond of saying, it contained the seeds of its failing. And I'll articulate those just a little bit. At the center of humanism was this idea, and you'll hear this a lot, of human exceptionalism. Now, granted, humans are kind of exceptional with our language, our thumbs, and our ability to communicate, to invent. Um, so humans are exceptional. Their cognition, the ability to reflect on things, their consciousness. But when it's taken to an extreme, it became human domination over nature. This idea that humans were in control of the world and they could do anything they wanted with the natural world. Alongside industrialism, capitalism developed as an organizing economic framework. Um, to support capitalism, European colonialism swept across the globe and colonized much of Africa, much of Asia, much of Latin America, and the United States, of course, was a colonial entity at one point. So the idea of rule by the colonizing masters of the Enlightenment happened. And now most countries have overthrown their colonial masters, but in its place we have now a what some people call a global imperialism. The sort of rule by Western, mostly Western, but not entirely corporate capitalism. So those are all the sort of political um, ends that humanism was kind of responsible for sparking. The one that I think is fascinating for us as spiritual contemplatives was presented by a sociologist in the early 20th century, Max Weber, and he said that science has been a wonderful thing. It's brought material comfort. It's eradicated many diseases. It's brought us to a point of, or not us in general, a privileged number of people on the planet to a level of safety and comfort. But the focus on materialism and scientific, I'll say dogma, although I'm not saying that all science is dogmatic, but the idea that all that can be known is the material world has created what he called the disenchantment of the world. So, as part of this human development, we have lost the magic, the mystery, the spirit of the world. So we'll talk more about that in the future. Okay, so those are some of the failings, and neo-humanism, which really means the new humanism, does not want to throw away the good parts of humanism. Sarkar just said we need to extend, we need to extend the rights, extend the love and compassion beyond humans to the rest of the world. So that's sort of the essential part of neo-humanism. So, in order to reconnect to some of these ideas, which many of you were probably familiar with, we are going to spend some time in breakout groups now. And in those groups, we will all be, each group will focus on one big idea that you took away from your reading of the liberation of intellect and really discuss it and discuss its relevance to education. So Christy's going to facilitate the breakout groups.
Yeah, so we will, like Kathleen said, we are going to try to break up by language if possible. We first thing it would nice to be do is introduce yourself and name and country. And then to select somebody to be a note taker because we will come back to the larger group and share, and we can share both by opening your mic, or we can also do you can write things in the chat. So like Kathleen said, you're going to pick one big idea, kind of really maybe taking something from last class that you had, and how is it especially relevant to education today? And it might be helpful too to have somebody that's facilitating a little bit to make sure everybody has an opportunity to add into the discussion. And again, we'll come back and we'll take a few minutes to give a brief summary about what we talked about in our rooms. So, are you ready for us, Scott?
Scott,
Yes, I'm setting up the breakout rooms now.
Fantastic.
great.
Thank you.
Good to see all your faces on the screen instead of my PowerPoint.
So again, you will have about 15 minutes, and we'll try to give you guys some heads up and warnings when the time is getting close to the end. So Kathleen, we decided to extend the room just a little bit because it took some time to transition in, so it might just be a few minutes behind on schedule. Just to give
Definitely. We are.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We took your comments seriously in your evaluations. Most of you wanted us to be better at time management, so we will try very hard. I think we can start facilitating the reports, though.
Okay, great. Yes, if we have group one, and I don't have the group one would have been we had Erica, Gustavo, Elena.
Yes.
Yes, if somebody from group one would like to share, that'd be fantastic.
And keep these brief, right? About
Yes, please.
2 minutes or
Yes.
3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, are you listening in,
Yes.
Erika? Okay. And I was in the group one, the room one, and the most idea that everyone shares there is the idea that today the education is not centered anymore in the professor, the lecturer. We are not the wisdom to the student anymore. Né? We are the center of the knowledge, né? And this is not true. Today we have the Google, and it is no better than us sometimes. And the education has to be centered in the individual, in the student, and this is really important. Also, everyone in the group took the idea or brought the idea that the spiritual linkage with education is very important to construct or to reconstruct the values, the character of the individual, not only the knowledge, the technical knowledge. I'm sorry for my English. I'm really practicing a long time. I have no one to talk, so I'm practicing again. So some words don't, I'm not saying perfectly, so I'm sorry by that.
Your English is perfectly
It's
understandable.
fantastic. Thank you, Erica.
So the idea was that the Neumann is not centered anymore in the professor, but the students, the individual, and bring together these values to respect all and the values of character and personal. Is that, I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Uh, room two, I think that would have been your room, Kathleen.
Yeah.
So
I will do a brief summary. Yeah, the main thing was really this idea of developing critical thinking in the students and in the children, because it's very important in today's society to really distinguish what is true and what is not true, and to be able also to challenge science to a certain extent, because although we use rationality and science is part of this rational thinking, still we need to be able to ask questions, and we need to be able to analyze assumptions that usually science works on, and also to look at the evidence and to see what else is there to create alternatives to the discourse, and to have the intellectual courage of doing that is very important. And one thing I said last was that intuition, apart from science and rationality, we need also to develop that intuitive faculty that we have as human beings in order to delve deeper into the reality of things and reflect and have a deeper, thoughtful process.
thank you. Great.
All right. And to room three, which would have been Ari and Amaya
and Talita.
and Talita. Thank you.
So what we discussed, Talita thought that Talita is working in a Neohumanist school in São Paulo, and she said that empathy to animate and inanimate beings are a central piece of the neo-humanist education. And she described an experience with 8 years old children that they, by chance, they killed a spider, and they were very sensitive about that already at that age, no? So some discussions were held related to that. And Amaya was referring to the need to offer free and available neo-humanist education for all people. We are both in the same project in northeast state of Brazil, which is the state where we have most of the African descendants in Brazil. Like 80% of the population here has some African ancestry, and somehow, since slavery, justice is not being done here. So we have sometimes very good schools, but with little inclusion of African descendants. And our school is the opposite. And we are trying to work in that direction. No? So Amaya was referring that this extension of injustice that we have in Brazil is somehow related to the collective mind, something that we don't question. No? And then we just repeat again and again. No?
Great.
And for me, I think we have to start with the kids themselves to accept the diversity that we have, and then extend this to nature and to animals and plants. That was it.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you. And our final room would be room 4, and I believe we have Ellen, Yulia, Alina, Soma. If somebody from that room would like to share.
I would like to share. We hadn't discussed who would tell something about this, but it's okay for me. Each of us discussed what they think is important in education and what is important for the society. So we talked about aspects like joy and fun for the children, experience-based learning, and get challenges without too much pressure, that they can be happy to be themselves. Then we discussed about the importance of that the subject taking care of plants and animals is in education too. Um, we discussed that it's very important that everything has access to education, which is in a humanistic way, so that there is the possibility for everyone to do work that is in line with your qualities and your skills. And that in the society is seen that a lot of people have to do simple and cheap work, but they deserve a total different kind of work they wanted to do. Then we were talking about inequalities, sorry, and the importance of inclusion and universalism in education and society, that there's space for all diversities. And at the end, we went deeper into the subject of what teenagers need in education, because our experience is that with younger children, it's most of the times easier to do activities, but the resistance of teenagers is a difficult a thing to deal with sometimes. And then that's a discussion we can go further into with each other. So that's, I think, a little bit of a summation of what we are talking about.
Thank you. Yes, so sounds like some
Great.
very fantastic discussions. Really appreciate everybody really leaning into the conversation. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Kathleen and we'll get started on a little bit more of a presentation here.
Great. Oh, wow. Those are wonderful insights. You're all really clearly absorbing a lot. And some of you have studied neo-humanism for years. I want to recognize that. The book Liberation of Intellect was written really over 40 years ago today, and it was directed toward a particular audience. And I'm sure you recognize some of the language was a little bit arcane to the modern ear, and but its relevance is really interesting. But this whole class coming up, we're going to be really examining what those ideas look like in the modern world. Um, we'll look at some of the latest research in education, and also how those ideas can be applied across cultural contexts. They were given originally in India to a particular cultural context, but neo-humanist education is a global movement. So I want to talk a little bit about the modern world, where we are right now. Most philosophers who really study the world, I think most of you would probably agree that we are in a moment of what I call polycrisis, multiple crises intersecting at every juncture. We are said to be entering a new geological age called the Anthropocene, which is an era defined by the massive impact that humans have had on the planet, resulting in global warming, the climate crisis. Just yesterday and the day before, the typhoon that hit the Philippines has dislocated 1 million people. You know, the tragedy of the climate crisis is with us. I know that Christy herself recently lived through a disaster. Christy, a sentence or two about that?
Just quickly, I lived through the 2023 wildfires of Lahaina, Maui. We lost 5 family homes, and we're still feeling the impacts. And I'm living in California as I navigate the rebuild and the support of rebuilding the community. So, yeah.
So we're looking at millions of people displaced, and the others, the non-human others, are being displaced rapidly. Up to 100 or more species a day disappearing from the planet Earth because of humans extending their own habitation into the wild areas, and other reasons, pollution. We cannot deny that humans have not yet learned to solve their problems. And Donna in our group talked about the sentiment, the geo-sentiment, the social sentiment. There's an awful lot to overcome to create a world of peace. Some scholars, rather than calling it the Anthropocene, I think have a more accurate description. They call it the Capitalocene. And this references the idea that it's not all the humans of the planet that have created these intersecting problems. It's a very small segment who rule the world with a particular philosophy, economy, and political approach that has really created much of the damage. So I think we need to acknowledge that. We also need to acknowledge that we live in an enclosed system, and all of these problems are related, totally related, interrelated to the dysfunction of the world system. And the world system is constructed by the way we think. That's why education is so important. The world system is our beliefs, our values, our ideologies, our assumptions, our customs, biases, doctrines, and stories. So we live in a house, and the walls and the ceiling and the roof are constructed of all these taken for granted ideas. And neo-humanist education, of course, the reason why it's such a challenge is because our current models of education are all linked to past ideologies, which are not serving humanity any longer. So in order to sort of move forward with the new philosophy of education, it's really important to understand the sort of chronological development of educational philosophy. And I'm going to do a very brief, Christy and I are both going to do a very brief discussion of 6 of the major philosophies with an idea to look for what does neo-humanism challenge about these philosophies and what does it take from these philosophies. And that will help us move forward out of this structure that we're sort of enclosed in. So I'm going to start with, and we'll try to keep this short because these are also in the readings that you will be doing this week. There's a handout that will go over what we present in this mini lecture. So in order to reinforce it. So perennialism, that may be the oldest philosophy of education. It has deep roots in the Western world in ancient Greek and Roman philosophy. But this idea that truth is found in classic texts, the old books, the ancient books, whether we're talking about the Bible, the Quran, the history books, Aristotle's work, most of truth can be found in those books. Os grandes libros. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Perennialism believes that everybody should have a common curriculum. Everybody should be learning the same thing from these great books, no matter where you live or in what era you live. It's very teacher-centered. As one of our reporters talked about, we're in a transition from a teacher-centered model to a person-centered model. And there's an emphasis on intellectual development. There's no attention in perennialism to the needs of the student or the interests of the student or their emotions or their feelings or their, anything having to do with anything other than the intellect. So this idea that teaching is telling, the way people learn is having something told to them as truth and then absorbing it in the brain and repeating it. So in the 20th century, a new idea emerged called behaviorism.
Yeah, so behaviorism is a philosophy that is deeply influenced in Western education, something I can very much speak to. So behaviorism focuses on what can be observed and measured. It really sees the mind as a blank slate, ready to be written upon by culture and environment. So behavior is shaped through rewards and punishments based on conditioning. So think of, I don't know if you are familiar with Pavlov's dogs or B.F. Skinner's experiments, uh, training behavior through external cues. This approach assumes that if you control the environment, you can control behavior. It supported the idea of social engineering. So we're talking about shaping citizens to fit society's needs. So in schools, this became the factory model of education. Things like structure, efficiency, standardization. Students were almost treated like parts of a machine, and success was measured by how well they performed according to set rules. The model reflects a mechanistic worldview based on Newtonian physics, where everything operates by predictable laws. It helped bring order and discipline, but it also narrowed our view what it means to be human. So behavioralism really reminds us when education focuses only on control and compliance, we really do risk lose touch with creativity, curiosity, and deeper inner life of the learner. And that will lead us to Kathleen talking about romanticism.
And you're probably, as we go along, recognizing some pieces of your own education in these ideas.
Yes.
No, that's behaviorism. Sorry, I forgot to put that screen up. So romanticism, I love this picture.
Me too.
So romanticism was a rebellion against behaviorism. In the 20th century, it was a rebellion against materialism, against science, against the new technologies and industrialism, and against the emerging bureaucracy. So some of the Romantic philosophers included Rousseau, who wrote the classic book Emile. That was earlier than the 20th century. But then also there were the poets, the Western poets. They valued art and emotion and spirituality and music. And interestingly, they challenged this idea of the blank slate. Behaviorists, remember, thought that children were born, they're just material. They're a blob of matter, and the brain was a blank slate that we could write anything on. But the Romantics believed that we were born with innate powers or a divine spark. So they embraced the deep feeling, and they believed that the Enlightenment had disenchanted the earth, and they sought to reestablish magic and mystery and poetry and mysticism and myth. So they were very much into all this, and their teaching methods fostered individual personal freedom, a lot of student choice, and they focused on things like awe and wonder and the cultivation of the imagination. So you can probably see some roots of Waldorf education here and other alternatives. And but that took us. John Dewey was very concerned with the Romantics and evolved a philosophy called pragmatism.
Yes, thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, so pragmatism, which offers a very different perspective that really does emphasize experience and democracy in education. And as Kathleen already said, John Dewey was one of the most well-known advocates of pragmatism. Pragmatists believe we learn best through experience, through the ongoing exchange between our inner world and the outer world. Knowledge is constructed, not delivered, built through things like action, reflection, and problem solving. Education is an active person of inquiry, not rote memorization. Truth isn't fixed, it's discovered through practical consequences, like by asking, does this work? Does it lead to growth? The philosophy values reason, logic, and experimentation, but also a little bit about imagination and adaptation. The classroom becomes a miniature democracy where students and teachers learn together and share responsibility for inquiry. Teachers act as guides and co-learners rather than authorities. Group projects, real-world problem solving, and reflection are key practices. So, pragmatism reminds us that learning is a lifelong participatory process, really a way to cultivate both understanding and leadership. And I'm going to pass it now back to Kathleen to talk about critical pedagogy and the social reconstructionism.
Okay. Educational philosophy took a big leap at the time of the 1921 stock market crash in the United States and the Western world, which sent us into a global depression that lasted for economic depression that lasted for many years. And when this hit around the 1930s, a lot of Western philosophers of education had been very interested in the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. And they saw communism as having great promise for overcoming the negative effects of big business and the resulting depression. So they really became fans of the work of Karl Marx and Lenin, and the Communist Party was quite big in the United States at that time. Most of these philosophers became very disenchanted when Stalin took power in the 1930s and began a series of repressions and brutalities that really turned people away from Marxism. But there's a very important Brazilian educator who I'm sure the Brazilians are aware of, Paulo Freire, who I had the great honor of knowing before he died. And some of you may have come in contact with his ideas. Paulo Freire was also a Marxist, and he was a key theorist in the move away from classical Marxism to critical pedagogy. And Freire had a very complicated but simple method of education and raising consciousness so that people could understand the power structures, especially in Brazil, that's where he started, the power structures that govern their lives. And so he was about awakening consciousness and especially to the things that were causing people's oppression. And he always insisted on the relationship between education and revolution. And I don't mean merely violent revolution with guns. I mean the revolution or the evolution of consciousness. So in critical pedagogy then, thanks to Freire, and he created a huge movement in the US, he was very popular. The aim of education became the emancipation from oppression. And it was important, as I mentioned, to understand the social power structures that governed our lives. What is it that keeps people oppressed? So he fostered the development of critical consciousness, which I know our breakout group talked about a lot, and the idea of questioning the assumptions. Remember that house we live in? How do we begin to question the beliefs and values that are keeping us under control? And critical pedagogy has a great commitment to social justice and universal ethics. And it insists that we really understand how capitalist relations works, how racism works, how sexism works, how ableism works, and how all these things have diminished the full development of human powers. So that's critical pedagogy. And the last philosophy we'll talk about, which emerged, it's really ancient and modern, emerged in full force in the 1980s.
Thank you, Kathleen. Yeah, so finally, we're going to explore holism, which draws from many of the previous philosophies that we were talking about, but definitely takes them further. So you can probably think of educators like Pestalozzi, Montessori, Steiner. They really emphasize that education should nurture the whole child. So we're talking about the mind, the body, and the spirit. They saw development as spiritual and a moral process, not just an academic one. And as Kathleen just said the holistic education movement became more visible in the 1980s, really influenced by things like humanistic psychology, where we're focused on personal growth and self-awareness, transpersonal psychology, the spirit of dimension of learning, things like systems theory and ecology, the interconnectedness of all life, the new science of complexity, the universe as a dynamic living system. And from this perspective, we see things like education cultivates things like aesthetics, intuition, imagination, emotional intelligence, and spirituality alongside intellect. It really kind of honors the interconnectedness between the learner and the environment, between parts and wholes. Students become more active, participatory, and reflective, and teachers foster more reverence, creativity, and inner awareness. And there's really a strong emphasis on social and ecological responsibility. And one of the key ideas here is the ultimacy, the human drive towards wholeness and transcendence. So we move towards this wholeness, qualities like compassion, integrity, and well being kind of naturally arise. So holism calls us to see education not as a preparation for success, but more as a path towards realizing our full human potential in harmony with all living systems.
Great. So that's our mini lecture. To sort of summarize, I think as you read the textbook that will be in this program, you'll begin to see both what neo-humanism education draws from these different philosophies and also what it challenges about the philosophies. And my aim with giving you this sort of philosophical overview is to help us locate neo-humanist education within the broader history of educational philosophy, because I really do think that in the future, neo-humanist philosophy of education will be a major force. Um, and this whole course will focus on um, how the neo-humanism philosophy of education has developed and how it connects to these other courses. I want to take just a minute to hear from you, and I really encourage people to speak out, even though you may feel shy. What connections did you notice between any of the philosophies and neo-humanist education as you understand it? Um, and I don't like to cold call on people, so I hope we see some hands raised. Just a sentence or two, whatever you see, anything you connected with.
Okay. Uh, I I
Julia,
s- uh, I see the last holism. It's when you take a person as a whole, spiritual part and psychic part and physical part, and that I feel is connected to neo-humanism a lot.
great. Yeah, very much so, huh? Let's hear from some other people. Ari,
So some of these philosophies, they react to materialism. So this is one point. And uh, also there are references to spirituality and other dimensions of human life. And pragmatism talks about the need of rationality and kind of rational problem solving and all that. It's also related to neo-humanism. So maybe there are some parts that can be used in the neo-humanist education, I think.
great. Thank you. Uh, do we see some more hands here? Come on, you don't be shy.
Yeah, we do have Ellen has her hand up.
Ellen, where's Ellen? I'm trying to
Um,
navigate
She
this.
just unmuted. Yeah. Ellen, please.
yes, hello. I think that behaviorism is in some kind of way telling us that the environment is important to children. not in a controlling way, but that the environment has to be nice, so that there is an accent on the environment only, and that it will be a good thing for children if the environment is okay. So it's not in the kind of way that behaviorism is telling us, but environment is important.
That's interesting because we take something which is kind of, I mean, I really am opposed to behaviorism because of the way it engineers children. But what Ellen is saying is so important, you know, that, and Montessori certainly knew this, that the environment is a teacher. And the Reggio Emilia schools also see the environment as a teacher. So that's great. Okay. We have time for a couple more. Alina?
Yeah, we have in the chat that Alina said, I saw the relation in alternative theories to step out of dogmatic path of intellectual knowledge only and to include connection to body and spirit in education as development of one's personality.
Right. And certainly we know that Rudolf Steiner, with his Waldorf schools, certainly attempted to attend to the spiritual development of children.
I think Patrick had a hand up. Am I right?
Patrick, thank you all for helping
For
me
me,
notice.
okay. Hello.
Yes, Patrick, we can hear you.
Okay. I see a gradual development in the philosophies of education from perennialism, behaviorism, rational romanticism, and pragmatism. There is a gradual development toward the ideals of a new humanist education, which is a holistic and is accumulated in the holism. So, but if you look at social reconstructionism, and critical pedagogies, you also understand that it is ticking towards social construct and understanding social power. But for me, my take on it is that the whole philosophy is a gradual development towards a perfection, which is the hallmark of a new humanist education. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay.
I'd like to say something.
Yes.
I think to challenge the idea of the blank slate in children, mind as a blank slate. And like Romanticism did that. In fact, we born with divine powers, with divine intuition, and education should be in neo-humanism is like really a way to support what is already in the child, which is this divine spark.
Great. Thank you, Didi. Good. Anyone else? We have time for maybe another comment or two.
I would like to say
Amanda, and then who's
Yelena.
next? Okay, so
Yelena.
Amanda.
I have studied 7 years Waldorf pedagogic and have also in my ancestors Waldorf people in medicine, and I think the magical part, because it was like Waldorf is good in holism and it's bad in romanticism, but I think romanticism and the magic part is not something negative. It is like wakening up a hope that you can really change the world by being spiritual and believing that there are other forces which are not always seen, which are also like there's an etheric body, for example, which is working when we get hurt, and it weaves again together the body, things which you never hear in other philosophies. So it has also science behind this magic thinking.
Thank you. Good. And who did
You're
I
welcome.
miss, Christy? Julia?
Somebody had spoken up.
Elena, I
Yes,
think.
Thank you,
it was
Didi.
me.
Where's
I had
Elena?
about a familiar idea about romanticism, and because I see connection between neo-humanism and romanticism in deep connection with nature. The same idea.
Great.
Thank you, Elena.
Yeah, in some ways, neo-humanism can take the best of all that's gone in the past and put it into a new framework. Ari has something to say.
I think you just gave a thumbs up.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Wow. All right, so we're moving toward the end here. I think it's important to recognize that philosophy is a very complex topic. And, starting next week, we'll focus more intensively on the categories of thought in cosmology. And we'll take them 1 week at a time. Next week, we'll really begin to look at cosmology, metaphysics, and ontology, very important aspects of neo-humanist education, because in my studies, at least, I have found that neo-humanism is deeply connected with some of the new scientific ideas coming to us from cosmology and from physics. So it's a new story emerging about the nature of reality that I think it's important for us to really understand so we can communicate the importance of neo-humanism. The week after that, we will look at epistemology in very practical terms. What do we know about knowledge and what kind of knowledge is important? And we'll look at major knowledge systems and how these different systems play into neo-humanist education. I call for epistemological pluralism. So not just rationality in science, which is very important, but also, as some of you have mentioned, intuition, traditional ecological knowledge, the knowledge of indigenous people, and the importance of myth and mystery. So we will delve into all of that. The next week, we look at my very favorite topic, which is philosophical aesthetics. Why did Sarkar insist that the arts should be at the center of neo-humanist education? And I think we will discover that it's not just because art is beautiful, or it arouses emotion in us of pleasure. We will explore the deeper aspect of the arts and cognition, how we think. And last of all, our last category will be ethics, which, as all of you know, is central to the development of character in neo-humanist education. Really, how do we infuse ethical thinking and ethical problem solving across the entire curriculum? So those are the categories we'll look at. And we'll start with that next week. And I want to emphasize that we will try to take philosophy and talk about it in everyday language and explore it in practical terms, what it means for our education. So we'll move now into talking about our assignments for the week. Christy's going to lead us into that.
Thanks, Kathleen. I know that Kathleen already discussed this a little bit about making sure that assignments are turned in on time. So the assignments are really created and designed to help shape the next class session. So that's why one reason we really would like them to be submitted on time. The other part that Kathleen already talked about is that, us as instructors and our fantastic teaching assistants will set aside specific days to respond to your work. And it's really difficult if those assignments are turned in late. And sometimes it causes we just won't have the opportunity to give you the feedback that we'd like to give you, because I think that's really important. So we really do ask you to try to do the assignments on time And like next week will be, you'll understand when I explain the assignment, that'll be a big part of what we will just be discussing in class. Everything is in the Google Classroom. Kathleen was great to put everything in both English and in Portuguese. So everything is in there for you to complete, including the links. This includes the reading, and for the reading, she added also a shorter summarized chapter for anyone that's having trouble with the full introduction. So we do ask you to try to do the full reading, but if you do need some kind of, I guess we would call them almost kind of like a condensed cliff notes, um, Kathleen was able to also provide that. So that's also there for you. None of the work is really any kind of busy work. It's really kind of thought out to add to this program, and then it all leads to your final project, in which will kind of describing your own personal evolving philosophy of new education. Another point to really to emphasize is we want your original work. We want to hear you from you. We want to hear it in your own words. And especially in these first assignments, you know, um, the grammar, things like that aren't as critical. Again, we want to hear from you. So we really ask you to not be using things like AI for your work. Is there anything else you want to say on that, Kathleen?
I think that covers it. A lot of people talked about AI, and we will definitely discuss that during this course. But
Yeah,
we're not looking for AI writing. We're looking for your thinking in your words. So
yeah,
don't
yeah.
hesitate to do that.
Yeah, so and then if you want, could you go forward for the okay, so for week one, we have it's already all posted in the Google Classroom. So it's the Introduction to Becoming One with the World, a guide to New Humanist education, the textbook that Kathleen. So the whole introduction is available for you, and I, I said earlier, it's in both in English and Portuguese. And just to reemphasize, there is a condensed version that if you need to supplement the reading. And for that, what you're going to be doing is taking is it two excerpts from the reading?
Yeah, two ideas from the reading.
Yes, two ideas from the reading and just doing a short reflection on those two excerpts. So we have there's a Google form for you to do it right within the Google Classroom. So it's a little different than your last class where I think you guys highlighted things throughout the text. This we're asking you to kind of cut and paste a excerpt from the reading and then add your own reflection to that excerpt that you have chosen from the reading.
And this
Um,
excerpt can be just two or three sentences.
yeah,
Doesn't need to be long.
yeah, yep. And then for assignment two, if you can go for
Oh,
it.
oh, these just reiterate the themes in the introduction, and you can choose anything you want to write about.
Yeah, so and then for so just what I talked about was choose two themes from the chapter, write a brief 100 words minimum reflection on which each means to in your own words. And then there is a second part, assignment two.
Yeah,
Eh,
assignment two.
Yep, it's an educational autobiography. So you're going to read chapter one, pages 15 to 21. The
And
Neo,
those are provided as just a short excerpt too.
okay, the Neo education, a philosophy of education for our time. And so you really want to think back to your own child education, and we're asking you to write your own brief educational autobiography and discuss how you were shaped by your education. So you can identify what philosophies from the reading and might have operated in your own schooling. And so you'll bring these to class next week, and we'll have time in our breakout rooms and small groups to talk about these. So that's why it's really important that you do the assignments. And I think you're going to enjoy this. I think it's going to be really, one, it'll be very beneficial because you're looking back at your own experience. But I also think sometimes it's fun to kind of reflect on the past, and especially as we're all learning so much on this journey. So that will be, and it's just I think we're just expecting a page or two, not a full paper.
Yeah.
Again, this is just your reflections, telling a little bit about your personal educational history. So your educational autobiography.
You know, I love this assignment, and for the 40 years that I've been in teacher preparation, I've almost always assigned it. And I'll tell you why. Interestingly, the research on teachers is pretty clear that almost all teachers, even when they learn new ideas, tend to revert to teaching the way they were taught. So our own education really feeds what we do as teachers. And this can be a good thing, but it can also be a way of not helping us move forward into better practices. So I like to unpack our individual stories and really looking at, the handout and, what part of our education was really behaviorism. And was there an element of romanticism anywhere? Or, there's also an idea from critical pedagogy called the null curriculum. It's like, what was left out of my education? What we've learned here in the United States from critical pedagogy is most people educated in our country have no idea of the genocide that was inflicted on the 500 plus indigenous societies which lived here before the Europeans got here. Maybe kids built a teepee in elementary school or built a longhouse and they studied a little bit about Indians, but we were never ever taught the full history. So that was part of our null curriculum. So when you write about your own educational experience, what was left out, if anything, or what most strongly influenced you? So that's why I like this assignment. And you will be, as Christy said, in your breakout groups, sharing your stories with other people. So be sure to come prepared for that. Again, this is short, and the PowerPoint is also available on Google Classroom. So you can see that. And Christy, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, so we are here to support. So please reach out through email is probably the best for Kathleen. I can be reached through email. I'm also now within the WhatsApp group. So please feel free to use either way of contacting me if you have questions. Um, you know, be in touch like what Kathleen has listed here, assessing the reading, assessing assignment, submitting assignment, understanding any aspect of the course, and then also to, letting us know if you're going to be absent. We want for you to succeed, and we're here to support that. And I always enjoy hearing from you. And then there's this beautiful reflective picture here from Kathleen.
That's my favorite picture. So we have a couple minutes left, but we want to let you go on time. Any questions or burning ideas or closing thoughts? Have you learned anything today? Or what did you find interesting? Or how can we do better? And we've got to get over this shyness about talking in a group. Didi Tapamaya, do you want to give us a reflection on what you noticed today? Put Didi on the spot here.
Sorry, yeah. I think it's really inspiring to see all of you from so many diverse backgrounds, but really wanting to know what this all about, and same time seeking that how does it apply to your own experience, your own world. So it's beautiful to see. So yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I found it really interesting to see the presentation you did of the history of education through the different ages.
because it really show how education shape an age and shape. I mean, it comes from the historical background of that age, but it also shapes what's happening, how people are thinking, and what's the culture of that age, etc. So it's very interesting. I
Oh,
never
I'm
thought
so
about it
glad.
before. Mm.
That makes me very happy to hear. I don't like hearing that you already know something already, and I'm not giving you anything new. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And Alina in the chat says, Christy, you want to read this? Maybe three. There's three perspectives.
So sorry. So we had, let's see, Alina, I saw the relationship and alternative theories a step out of the dogmatic path of intellectual knowledge only and to include connection to body and spirit and education as development of one's personality. We also have Amanda said Rudolf Steiner is against vaccination in order to give children the possibility to pass through crisis and get stronger by own evolution and not by dominating and fighting something we declare as dangerous enemy. It is going through processes and trust ourselves, developing ourselves.
And of course, I'm sure that's a topic we could have a great debate about, but we
Yeah.
probably won't.
Erica Ishvari said, it's not easy, but also not impossible to deconstruct the way we think. And mainly, we act in education. Where I'm working, the most difficult is to get out of the idea that the technological information is the most important staff in the curriculum. I think that's really powerfully
Great,
said.
great
And then
points.
Alina Lilamai said, I like how you put it together about the evolution of teaching concepts, as well as the idea behind the world crisis as disconnection and an idea of universalism as a solution. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
I think that's a great point to end on. Really, I've loved getting to know you all a little bit, and I hope we have a wonderful 6 weeks together. And thank you all for showing up and showing your interest. And we'll see you next week at the same time.
And again, please be in touch if you need anything.
Thank you.
Love to see those hearts. Bye-bye.
Obrigada.
Uh,
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, everyone.